Dolner
Rudolfer.
Rudolfer in memory of her father Mordechai ben Eliezer. A week of learning, Michael and Sharon Glass in memory of his mother Rivka Yitta ben Yitzchak Kain. Beverly Hershko, memory of her mother Chaya Dova Bas Nissan. And I believe there are no days of learning. We again want to dedicate the learning to a refuah shlema for Zev Kippur. All right. We are discussing Orla, Klayim, and Chadash. We were discussing what are the dinim. So somehow we've established that Orla and Klayim sort of are a package, and there was an issue whether Chadash, according to Rebbe Eliezer, whether Chadash is part of the package. Then we had a machlekes of whether Orla in Chutz La'aretz is applicable or not. Rabbi Yochanan brought a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that it is. Others argued that it is not, and in the is that it's a suffix. And in the suffix position, there were two shitas. One that you could buy Orla, like you were driving and there's a fruit stand and the guy's selling apples. You don't have to ask what tree did these apples come from. And then the more lenient, and even more lenient shita was you could walk in, one of those pay $5, pick a bushel of apples. You wouldn't have to ask which trees are young, which trees are old. You could even pick yourself. The suffix goes that far. Okay, so based on all of that, we're on the top of Lamed Tes Amid Aleph, on the second word of the second line. Okay, Ha'amer le Shmuel Revanan Shmuel, who was the one who quoted Rabbi Yehuda that it's only a Kabbalah. Okay, it's only a minhag. Tani ozev yored v'lo keach ozev yored v'lo kate. Why did you have the two steps? Either we should say that both Orla and Kalayim are suffix the Rabbanan l'chutz la'aretz, so it's based on the suffix you could buy without worrying about how old the tree was or what was grown in the same area. Or you could go even more leniently and say you can even pick yourself. Now, with the pick yourself, it's a little bit more problematic with Kalayim because you can see it. But in any event, we should say the same thing in both cases. So Mar the Ravana may say Lekoila. He says the Mishnah is the lenient version. So what does it mean by the lenient version? The super lenient you can pick yourself, or just lenient you can buy. He says the moderately lenient. Zev is yored v'lokate. You can go and you could buy from the goy or from the farmer. Bilvad shelo yilkot biyad, as long as you do not actually pick it yourself. Okay. Amr Levi l'Shmuel. So Levi says to Shmuel, Arya. That's a nickname for Shmuel. And it's possible that nickname, the footnote suggests that there was a king named Yaruch. Now, as a general rule, we always know that Shmuel and Rav and Shmuel always have a machlokes. So as a general rule, we always paskin like Rav in Iser v'Heter, And we always paskin like Shmuel in Dine Mamanos. Since Dine Mamanos Chutz Loretz is based on Dina de Malchusa Dina, that rules establish legitimate rules that are non-discriminatory, established by the government, are obligatory for Jews. So therefore, he's called Aruch because of Dine Mamadus. All right. So in any way, Venti says Aruch, he Safekli va'ana echo. If you can figure out, both of them, of course, lived in Bava. If you can figure out how it's a suffix, then I'll eat it. All right? So now, another similar ruling where people go even further. We're talking only about Orla here. Rav Avia v'Revi bar Rav Chanan misafku sfuke lahadadi. Each one went into an orchard and picked apples. It's any tree, but I'm using apples, and put the apples in a basket and gave it to the other. So even though the first guy could, in theory, say, well, this is a small tree, maybe it's an Orla tree. Nonetheless, it created, even if he did pick that Orla tree, from the standpoint of the other guy who didn't see him pick them, it's a genuine suffix. So each created the suffix for the other, and they both ate. Okay, so that's a pretty lenient step because the giver, who was a Rav, knew whether it was Orla or not. Now we're going to go even further. Amre Harife de Pumbedisa, the sharpest scholars in the yeshiva of Pumbedisa, Ein Orla b'chutz la'aretz. They picked apples, they didn't care. They said there is no concept of Orla outside of Eretz Yisrael. So we have a whole range of opinions now, from its Asidiraisa to pick them yourself and eat them. So we got to figure out what's the halacha. Sholcha Rabbi Yehuda l'kaimei de Rav Yochanan. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan was the Gadol Hador, and he was in Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Yehuda sent him a letter. What's the din chutz la'aretz? Shalach le. Rabbi Yochanan sent back. Now he remembers that it's halacha l'Moshe Messina. He was machmir. Stom sveika. Don't, literally it means hide the sveika. But it really means, even though legitimately there's an argument that suffix is permissible, don't publicize that. Because in Chutz La'aretz, people are already makil from his perspective, and they may go too far. So don't let people know that the halacha is suffix is mutter. Va'aved vada. And if you know for sure that apples or peaches or any other fruit are orla, destroy them. Okay? V'hachreis al perosehem shetu'unim geniza. And make an announcement that any merchant who is selling suffix orla, the fruits should be hidden away, should be destroyed. Now, why would he do that? Because he was afraid the merchants would intentionally load a basket with orla. It would not be, and you might be buying only orla in your basket, and it would not be a suffix, and it's a mixture lifnei aver, so I told him to destroy it. And then he went very much further, and he made a shocking statement. Anyone who says that the concept of orla is inapplicable outside of Israel, lo ye'lo nin v'necher Mashlich chevel begorel b'kahal adoshem. Basically, it's an idiom. The person who measures with a rope, because they measured the divvying up of the land when they divvied up the land, Yehoshua, by using a measuring rope. So those people who argue that there's no such thing as Orla Chutz La'aretz, their children, their grandchildren will have no chelek in Eretz Yisrael. In other words, they get kares. That's a very stark statement. Now, the inahu kaman sevrua. So based on that sharp statement, how could the rabbis in Pumbedisa say there's no Orla Yisrael? Yeah, he's in effect putting all of Pumbedisa in Chayrim, or giving them all kares. So ki hadesanya, they had on whom to be somech. They said in a brisa. Now this brisa gives a very long Messiah. Okay, Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi Omer Mishum Rabbi Yossi Bendor Adur Maska Sha'omer Mishum Rabbi Yossi Aglili Sha'omer Mishum Rabbi Yochanan Ben Nuri Sha'omer Mishum Rabbi Elazar Agadol. So we have a very long Masorah going back to very early in the Tanaitic period. Ein Orla b'chutz la'aretz. They had whom to be somech, because there is no Orla outside of Israel. Okay. The problem is that the source of that seems to be Rabbi Eliezer. And Rabbi Eliezer says in our Mishnah, he doesn't disagree with the Tanakama. All he did was add Chadash. So what's going on? Below, Rabbi Elazar doesn't buy that. Go look at the Mishnah. Va'anan tanan, in our Mishnah, it says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer af chadash, that Orla is Asher l'chutz la'aretz, Kalayim is Asher l'chutz la'aram, and even Chadash is Asher l'chutz la'aretz. So the Gemara says, Tani Chadash. Erase the word af, and then maybe you could argue that he does not buy Kalayim and Orla, but he does say Chodesh applies Chutz La'aretz. Now we don't, all right. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan, Orla b'Chutz La'aretz, halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Now remember, we had it twice before, that Orla Chutz La'aretz is halacha l'Moshe Sinai, which means it's a d'oraisa. And nobody can do in a brisa that it's Chutz La'aretz, it's no good. So we have a big problem with this statement if we want to be Mekel Chutz La'aretz. So he asked Rav Asi, was quoting Rabbi Yochanan, V'hasanya, but what about the brisa that says Safek Orla ba'aretz Asur in Israel, because we go Safek l'chumra and dine that are minatayra, so it's Asur. Besurya mutter, but a Safek in outside of Eretz Yisrael is mutter. And if you get even further than Syria, b'chutz la'aretz yored v'lokate, you can even buy it if there's a Safek. So how can you say that in the face of your own statement that it's a d'oraisa, it's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai? Ashtumam k'shachada. He paused for a minute because he wanted to formulate accurately what his opinion was. And Omerle Emakach Nemru, this is what Rabbi Yochanan actually said. It's a very unusual halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Sveika mutter vadai asur. The halacha l'Moshe Sinai is a vadai, orla is asur. But outside of Israel, Safek orla is mutter. And that's part of the halacha l'Moshe Messina. So that makes it understandable. Okay? And then another Ravasi, Omer Ravasi, Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Loikin al Haklayim Davar Torah. That unlike Orla, where we're Makil, when it comes to Kalayim, you would get Malchus if you ate produce of Kalayim or plant Kalayim outside of Eretz Yisrael, even outside of Eretz Yisrael. Now we're going to argue about that. So now we're going from Orla, which we resolved that in Israel, Orla is Aser Minatayra. Outside of Israel, Orla is Aser based on either Midrabanan or based on a clause in the Halacha l'Moshe Sinai, but Safek is mutter. Okay, Omerle, Rav Elazar Rabbi Yosi, Va'anan Tanan, Haklayim Midivrei Seifrim. You just told me Klayim is Aser Minatayra. I think Klayim is Aser only Midrabanan. V'lo kasha, that's not a problem. Now, Klayim is a very broad term. Klayim applies to planting two kinds of grain or produce in the same patch. Klayim applies to clothing. Klayim applies to mating animals that aren't the same, right? Klayim is very broad. And the last kind, Klayim, is, let's say, cutting a branch of lemon tree and grafting it to rootstock of orange trees. So that's called grafting, okay? And that's also Klayim. You can graft an orange branch onto a rootstock of orange, but you cannot graft grapefruit or esrog or lemons onto orange rootstock. Okay, low kasha, not a problem. Karen, when it comes to planting different kinds of seeds in the same patch, it's it's midrabanan chutzlaretz when you're talking about seeds. However, kan bahar chavas ha'ilon, but it's the raisa even chutzlaretz when it comes to grafting. Okay, Kiddush Shmuel, and Shmuel taught the exact same thing. The Omer Shmuel. Now there's a pasuk, and this pasuk is before Eretz Yisrael. Eschu koisai tishmaru my chukim shahakachti lecha kvar. You have to observe my statutes that I told you before you went to Israel, that apply even before you get to Israel. Lo sasbia, you can't make two different kinds of animals. Klayim sadachalo tizra, and different kinds of seeds of the field you should not plant. Now I'm translating their klayim meaning seeds, but we'll see it's not so. Okay, so ma behemtecha b'harva, just as the animals, you don't plant animals, you mate animals. You can't do a sheep and a goat. Okay, af sadacha b'harva akarkava. So too, I'm saying, since they're both the same pasuk, I'm applying the same rules to both. So you can't graft trees, is what the pasuk is talking about. Okay, and that's why it's aser min hatayra, even chutz la'aretz, only the planting, the grafting part. Okay, so the oma behemtecha noheg ben b'aretz ben chutz la'aretz, af sodecha noheg b'aretz ben chutz la'aretz. But the Gemara immediately challenges that. How can you say that? The word sadacha means land in Israel, right? Elaksiv sadacha. It doesn't that mean that Kalayim is only in Eretz Israel? We know all the time, but Oretz. And here Sadcha is like Ba'aretz. So Ahu Ma'ute Zerayim Shebechutz La'aretz. So that should exclude seeds outside of Eretz Yisrael. Rav Anan Rav Hanan Rav Anan Havu Shekale Uzle Be'orcha. Rav Hanan, who is older, was walking together with Rav Anan, who was his Talmud, along the street in Bavel. B'chazuhu lahu gaver de kozera zerayim bahadei adati. And they saw a farmer planting radishes and turnips in the same patch. Now, obviously, it could be any double, any non the same pair of produce. Amalei Nese Mar Nishamte. So the student said to Rav Hanan, Master, excommunicate that guy, he's planting Klayim. Amalei, Rav Hanan replied to him, Lo Chav Risu. You got it wrong. You when I told you this halacha, you didn't understand me. Because outside of Eretz Yisrael, Kalayim is only midrabanan, and we don't have to nail him for that. We can't put him in chayrim for that. V'su chazuhu lahu gaber. Later on, they saw somebody else sowing. The kozerach ita v'surei bei begufnei, and he said they were sowing wheat and barley in a vineyard. So now we have the archetypal type of Klayim. Amalei Nese Mar Nishamte. Oh, Rebbe, this time I gotta be right. Nail this guy, put him in Chayrim. So Amalei Lo Tzahartzu. Literally, you're not too bright. The word Sahar means glowing light. You're not too bright. Okay? Lo kaimalon kerevi Oshaya. Don't we hold like Rebbe Oshaya? The Omar Ad Sheizra Chita Sa'ara Chartzon B'mapoiles Yad. Okay. So this Rabbi Yehoshaya has he's a Das Yochid, and he has an out there Shita. Since the Pasuk says you may not sow diverse kinds of plants, he says the only time you get malchus for it is if you have wheat and barley and grape seeds in your hand, and you sow all three simultaneously with one release of the seeds from your hand. Okay. Now, in terms of the way the rabbis interpret, because this is very problematic, and the fact that this Gemara is listening,
that's what's called Kalayim in the Torah,
right? But that's the way the pasuk seems to read.
Right.
So the Rishonim have a big fight about this. We do not paskin like him. We say that even if you have a grapevine that's 100 years old and you plant wheat within this, right next to it, that's Goliath. But and I added this in, so he holds that you only get malchus if you do it that way, but that it's usher. It's pater aval usher. All right. So Rav Yosef Ma'arev V'Zurei Zera. Rav Yosef actually did this. He took two radishes and turnips and he scattered the seeds together. Amalei Abaye V'Nantanan Keklayim Divrei Seifrim. But, and this is in Bava. Didn't we learn that it's Asir Midrabanan? How could you do that? Amalei Lo Kasha, not a problem. Klai B'Kere Keren Kan B'Klei Zerayim. There's a difference because the pasuk mentions wheat and in a vineyard. So wheat in a vineyard is the strict stuff, and you can't do that chutz la'aretz. But since it's a suffix chutz la'aretz, you can do two kinds of plants, not wheat and not grapes, and it's not forbidden outside Israel. So clay hakeren ba'aretz isura b'hana. So now he's explaining why he says that. Okay, clay hakeren ba'aretz asurim b'hana. Not only can't you eat it, but you can't use those grapes anymore, and you can't use that wheat anymore. That's asur b'hana. B'chutz la'aretz nami gazru b'hu rabbanon, and the rabbis prohibit it because it's so strict that it's asur b'hana. The rabbis make it asur the rabbanon chutz la'aretz. Klai zurayim de ba'aretz lo usirei b'hana. But if you plant radishes and turnips, that's wrong. You're not allowed to eat them, but they're not asur b'hana. You could sell them to goyim, for example. Okay, so b'chutz la'aretz nami lo gazru b'hu rabbanan. So the rabbis don't bother making the gezerah on just tomatoes and cucumbers or radishes and turnips outside of Israel, and that was his opinion. Okay, so then Rav Yosef says, you know what? I really blew it. I really shouldn't have done that. Hadar Amar Rav Yosef Lav Milsehida Amri. What I said is wrong. The Rav Zera Ginsa Debe Rav Mishore Mishore, because Rav sowed when Rav did this, he planted the different vegetables in distinct areas. If you imagine the garden is this table, he planted the radishes in that corner and the corn in this corner, the tomatoes over here, the cucumbers over here, and the cabbage in the middle. So that he did, even in Bavel, pay attention to the fact that non-wheat and grape products are kalayim, and it's asur derabban. Okay, so my time alav mishum eruv eruve kalayim. So now they ask the following question: why did he, if did he plant them so far, in distinct areas? Okay, Bishlama Ashme and it would be that reasonable if we figure that he did it that way. Arba al arba ruchos haruga achas b'mitzoi, that he planted 4 different things in 4 corners and the 5th one in the middle. Shapir. Then what Rav did would be a raya that any kind of plants chutz la'aretz are asur midrabanan. But that's not why Rav did it. Rav did it to make it easier for the guy, the cook, to go out and pick corn or to pick cabbage. If they're all mixed together, it'll take him much longer. If he keeps them separate, it'll be easier on the kitchen crew. Okay, Ela hacham noi. He did it that way to be nice looking. Inami, or the other rationale, mishum tircha deshma'ahui, to make it easier for the cook to prepare dinner. Okay, next Mishnah. Now this Mishnah,
Doing it that way,
I'm sorry.
doing it separately.
Yeah, he did it separately. That's a fact. Now, why did he do it separately? Did he do it separately because he held that it's asur midrabanan even for any kinds of plants, not just wheat and vineyard? That's one possibility. Second possibility is he did it that way because he thought it looked nicer. To have strawberries mixed with blueberries mixed with corn is ashkababu. But by doing everything in separate sections, it looked prettier. And the third possibility was that it made it easier to harvest. If you need corn for dinner, you can cut the corn. If you need cabbage for dinner, you can cut the cabbage. You don't have to hunt around. So
Is that making it acceptable rather than mixing it all together?
well, so since we had two possibilities, not related to Kalaya, it looked nicer, it's easier to harvest. We say that it's not proof that Rav did it that way is not proof that corn and cucumbers can't be planted together mid'Rabbanan. So we're left with that Klayim Chutz La'aretz absolutely for sure is a grain, wheat, barley, and a vineyard. And we don't know about radishes and turnips. Okay, that's where it ends. And if you're going to make a garden, the HOA will nail you. So you don't even have to know. Okay, this Mishnah is very pertinent to the Tekufa we find ourselves in and the ensuing Gemara for the next couple of days, because it talks about inyane that are related to the days of repentance and to Yom Kippur. Okay, kol ha'oseh mitzvah achas meitivin lo. Anyone who does any mitzvah at all, good comes from it. Okay, and ma'arichin lo yomav, and his life is extended, is lengthened. V'nochal al ha'es ha'aretz, and he will inherit the land. Now we could interpret that to mean that that when Mashiach comes, he'll go back to Israel. That's a valid interpretation because Rashi says it's Olam Haba. So even if he dies in the meantime, he'll still inherit the land. It's Olam Haba. V'chol she'einu oseh mitzvah achas. Anyone who passes up the opportunity to do a mitzvah, and mitivin lo, it's not good for him. The ein marichin lo yamav, and his life is not extended. The einu nachal es ha'oretz, and he does not get olam haba if he passes up a mitzvah. It doesn't say do an avera. It says passes up doing a mitzvah. What?
Talking about an
Mitzvah say. Okay. Raminu. Now, this Mishnah seems to say any mitzvah whatsoever. It does not distinguish one mitzvah from another. It applies equally to putting tzitzis on your clothes as it does to inviting a poor person or giving tzedakah, any mitzvah at all, this Mishnah seems to say. So we're going to challenge this Mishnah for one of the things in the early part of the davening that everybody skips, except Ruvain and me. Okay? Uraminu, I'll challenge that. Elu devarim shadim ochel perisem b'elam hazeva keren kiyam slowly elam haba. These are the mitzvahs where you get some benefit from them in this world, and the major benefit comes in the world to come. Eluhain, here's the exhaustive list. It's only 5. Kibbut Avim, honoring your mother and father. Gemilas Chasadim, doing good deeds. Hachnasas Orchim, feeding, giving food and lodging to people who otherwise wouldn't have it. Hachnasas Orchim doesn't mean inviting Bob to my table on Shabbos. It means inviting a widow or somebody who otherwise would be lonely, or putting up somebody coming to look at Century Village, see what a Shabbos is like. That would be Hachnasas Orchim. Okay? V'havayas shalom bein adam lechaveiro, resolving conflicts between two individuals. The Talmud Torah keneged kulam, and Talmud Torah is more important, or at least the equivalent of all of them. So it's just 5. So our Mishnah says any. So what's the problem? Omer Reb Yehuda Hachakamar. Here's what our Mishnah is trying to say. Kol ha'isei mitzvah achas yisera al zechiyosov. Anyone who does a new mitzvah, a single new mitzvah, adds to the side of the pan of the balance another good deed to counter the not so good deeds on the other side. Ometiv lo, and thus he gains one more mitzvah than a Aveira, and he gets Olam Haba. Daima Kimi Shemakayim Kol HaTorah Kula, and God judges him because he has one extra good deed, as if he were a tzaddik gamur, and a tzaddik gamur, of course, keeps the whole Torah. Okay? Meklal, so according to this, the Hanach, when it comes to the list that we read, are 5 afilu b'chadanami. So there too, he gets both a reward, the interest, the whatever gets thrown off from it in this world, and then the keren, the what?
Principle.
The principle, yeah, but it's not money. Right. The principle he gets in the world to come. So if you do not, so now that's a given. That doesn't say if you're a good guy, you get a reward. This says you automatically get a reward. So what happens if you don't have the extra mitzvah and your scale is imbalanced to bad? So what goes on? So Omer Rav Yishmaya, Rav Yehuda's, Rav Yishmaya, Leimer, he said, this is what it means. She'im hoisa shakula, if it turns out that there's exactly the same good and bad on your scale, and the Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva, that's how you're supposed to think. What the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah says, if there's a person who's totally good, immediately goes to good in the book that has 3 books in front of him, Hashem. If he's totally bad, he immediately goes to Misa. But everybody in the whole world is supposed to think of himself as teetering in exactly 50-50. Okay? And you want to add one to the pan. Then there's a whole tumult that says, Rav Kaspedoy in Rosh Hashanah says any mitzvah, but Rav Kaspedoy in the Yerushalmi is quoted as saying the mitzvah of tshuva. So, okay. So in any event, machra'as. So any of the mitzvahs and the 5 also are talui, because everybody is 50-50, and if you do any of these 5, it's especially heavy weight on the good side of the scale. But if you do none of those mitzvahs ever in your whole life, then you're wiped. Okay, you take the down escalator, and there's no air conditioning. V'chol ha'isei mitzvah achas yisera al zechiyosov mativin loi. Is it so that anybody who does just any one mitzvah that throws the scale in his favor is rewarded with good? V'ramino, I can challenge that. Kol zechiyosov merubin me avonosov. Anybody, this is a little warning to us, anybody who has more good than bad, ma'erin lo, he gets punished in this world for the bad. V'daimekami shesaref kol ha'torah kula, and this is somebody who does bad lahachis intentionally. And it's as if he disburned the whole Torah v'lo shayer mimenu afila isachas, and not even one letter of that Torah survived that burn process. V'chol ha'avonos merubin mizuch yosov, But anybody who has more bad than good, even low, he gets rewards in this world. And the daima kamishakayim kala Torah kula, and God treats him in this world as if he's a perfect tzaddik, and he gets all, and he observes the whole Torah v'lo chiser ois achas mimenu without eliminating a single letter. So this is the Gemara's attempt to explain why utterly wicked people like Putin wind up being heads of a country. They get all their rewards in this world, so they're all used up, and they really roast in the world to come. Whereas good people may have some suffering or unpleasantness in this world, but that means he's slayed his wife clean, and he gets total good in the world to come. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now, Omer Abaye, our Mishnah said that anybody who does any mitzvah gets good in this world. The Avdin Le Yom Tov. What does that mean? That in this world he has pleasant days. The Yom Bish, and if his sins outnumber, it's a different opinion. His sins outnumber his benefits. He has a Yom Bish, a day of embarrassment or bad. Okay, and then that he uses up, he wipes his slate clean, and he gets good in the world to come because he was teetering. Okay, Rabba Omer Haimani. Who does the Bryce agree with? Rav Yaakov, it's Rav Yaakov the Omer, Schar Mitzvah Bahai Alma Leika. There is no reward for mitzvahs in this world. The Sanya with a Bryce of Rav Yaakov Omer, Ein Lacha, Kol Mitzvah Mitzvah, Shvitsuva B'Torah, Shematan Schara B'Tzida. All of the mitzvahs you perform, there are no rewards whatsoever. She'en techayas hamesim tluyabo, and resurrection of the dead when Mashiach comes is not dependent on the mitzvahs you perform. And so now we have a problem. So now we're going to resolve it. When what's the issue? On the pasuk that talks about kibbut avaim, it says laman yarich yamecha v'laman yetev lach, that you'll live long and things will go good for you. Which is the hardest mitzvah there is. Ubishluach hakansiv, and the easiest mitzvah there is, just flicking your finger and the mommy flies out of the nest, and that's the whole mitzvah. Laman yetev lecha v'harichas yomim. It gives the exact same phrase. Thing, your life will be lengthened and things will go for you. Good for you. So that means that we'll see that it's in Olam Haba, not in this world, because Haresha Omer Lo Aviv, a fellow's father, says to him, Allah Alabira, climb up the ladder, the Havili goes los, and take the baby birds out of the nest. So it's the hardest and the easiest mitzvah, and he's Makayim both at once. The shalach es ha'am, and the guy throws the mother off. The natal es ha'banim, and he takes the babies. He did what his father asked. Obechazi rasa nafalumes, and on his way down, the ladder rung breaks, and he falls and he kills himself. So, Heichen Taivas Yamav Shelzeh, where is the good life that this was promised? The guy just died. The Heichen Arichas Yamav Shelzeh. And where is the extended life this guy was promised? His life was cut short. Ella Laman Yetiv Lecha. So obviously, Laman Yetiv Lecha, things will be good for you. La'olam Shakula Toiv means in the world to come where everything is good. Ulaman Yarichun Yamecha, and the phrase your life will be lengthened. Li'aylam Shakuloro means that you make the cut and you get into Ilam Haba. It doesn't mean instant reward in this world. Vidilma Lav Hachichava. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, this is a pretty mushal. I love this mushal. But maybe it never really happened. Maybe it's just a made-up story that somebody's doing in a sermon. And the Gemara answers Rabbi Yaakov Maisa Chaza. Rabbi Yaakov, who reported this story, witnessed this event. So it's a real thing. And Vidilma Mahar Rahava. So maybe the son completed the mitzvah, and on the way down the ladder, as we're living, and I were learning, and he saw a girl sunbathing in the next yard. He's up high, and he had inappropriate thoughts, and that was sinful, and that's why he died. The Yerah says that can't be. Machshava ra'a ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa. God does not equate thinking to doing. You can't always control your thoughts, but theoretically, you can always control your behavior. Okay? The Dilma, the Gemara says, yeah, but there's
Thinking about a good thing also doesn't count unless you do it.
That's a discussion. Okay?
We'll discuss it.
But if Hirhurim, always Hirhurim means negative thoughts. Okay? I mean, we do say machshava kamaisa with good things. If you say, I'm going to buy the world's most beautiful esrog, and when you get to the esrog store, all the good esrogim are gone, you get credited as if you got the good esrog. So machshava kamaisa, but hirhurim, the word hirhurim, which also means thoughts, virtually always means negative thoughts. Now, just recently we had hirhurim when he was thinking about Torah, but that's because he was walking into a bathhouse. So you're not supposed to think Torah. So it's not really an exception to the rule. All right. Any event. Vidilmer mahara v'diskachavim hava. But there is an exception to you don't get punished for bad thoughts. If you're thinking, I'm going to go to Sunday Mass this week, that's a bad thought. You don't get, and you get punished for that because the pasuk says, Laman tipa shes beis Yisrael v'libam, to grab Israel by their hearts. In other words, to entice them to do avodah zarah. So that's taka punishable. So ihu nami hachika amar. That is exactly what Rabbi Yaakov was talking about. Isal kedaita schar mitzvah b'hai olma. If you say that you get rewarded in this world for your mitzvahs, amayla agin mitzvah alei. Why didn't climbing the ladder and getting the baby birds, doing what his father wants, and doing shluch hakan protect him? Ki heichi delo asi lidei hirhur. And that protection should have extended even to turning away when he saw the girl sunbathing in the next yard. So the Gemara replies, Ha Omer Rabbi Eliezer told us, Shluach mitzvah ein nizikin. Someone going to do a mitzvah cannot come to harm. That's why we give shluach mitzvah money to people flying somewhere. Hasam. Behilucha sunshiny, that only protects you going, but not coming. Ha'amar Rabbi Eliezer, but Rabbi Eliezer also said, Shluach mitzvah ein nizikin behilcha sun v'lo b'chazirasan. It's a two-way trip. If you're going to do a mitzvah, you'll come to no harm on the way back. So, The Gemara now gives a basic principle. Makam sakana chomer tvei. The place where there is actual danger is worse than a normal situation, because if you have any reason whatsoever to have pissed God off, he will take advantage of that sakana and nail you. Okay, and here's what the story was. Sulam ra'uya have. The ladder was rickety. The kabiya chezeka, and the potential of harm was right there. One of the rungs had a crack in it. V'kol heicha the kabiya chezeka, and whenever there's a genuine, obvious risk, Lo smichinan anisa. We cannot rely on God doing a miracle to save us, to deceive. Now, this story was when Shaul was king, and the Rabban Shlaim wanted Shmuel to go anoint David. Shmuel was afraid to go because he thought Shaul would kill him. So he was going to do what God told him. He was a shliach mitzvah. But yet he said to God, look, I'm afraid God Shaul's going to get me. So you see, the danger overwhelms the protection. The Yomer Shmuel, if I go, Shmuel will find out and he'll kill me. So there you see that principle. Okay, Amar Rav Yosef, Ilmole, the Roche Acher Lahai Kro. Maybe Acher, who was Elisha ben Abua, who deviated from Judaism, and he was a Tana, and then they started calling him Acher, the other guy. Okay, and if he had known this interpretation that it's Olam Haba, he wouldn't have gone off the derech. The Rebbe Yaakov bar Bas Brate, if he interpreted it like his nephew Yaakov did, Lochata, he would not have gone off the derech. The Acher my high, what mahu? What happened to him? Ikadamri, some suggest. The high Gavna Chaza, he saw a guy climb a ladder to get a bird at his father's behest and fell and died. The Ikada Amre, some say he saw it was another case. We read Eila Eskara on Yom Kippur, the 10 martyrs. One of them was Chutzpis the Metorgamon, who translated for, I think was Rabbi Akiva, but I'm not sure. So, Ikadamre, the Lishna, the Chutzpis HaMetorgamon Haza, that he saw the Romans cut out Chutzpis, his tongue, and he saw it being dragged. The Chaza Garir Le Devar Acher, he saw a pig dragging the tongue of Chutzpis on the ground. The Omer and Acher said, Peh Shehepik Margolios Yachalkek Afar. The mouth that spoke pearls of Torah is now licking the dirt. V'nafek chata, and he went out and sinned. And we'll stop there. I'm taking you home, right?
And you correctly informed me that it was the 22nd. Today is the 21st.
What?
Today is the 21st of September.
Well, there's still no dead people. The latest dead person was the 19th. But it's moving right along.
Yeah.
All right, now somebody, my Sunday will be my last day. So we need a substitute.
You should qualify that.